Hello, my brainwashed selves. This is Joshua the Heretic coming at you today. I wanted to come to you because I don't understand something. Have you guys heard of the Westboro Baptist Church that pickets, funerals and says hurtful, mean things about people? I just don't understand why. I don't understand why would somebody feel the need to push their beliefs on somebody else and to the point where it just makes their life miserable. It says in Scripture, it says, if a man wishes to be ignorant, you let him be ignorant. And these people are just trying to grieve a lost or a loved one. It is not for us to force our beliefs on anybody. Do not cast your pearls before swine. Don't cast that which is holy unto the dogs. Don't force your opinion or your belief system on anybody. And don't ever say hurtful things. I don't understand why anybody would ever say hurtful things to another human being. What is the purpose? Do you feel that insecure about yourself that you have to say hurtful things to another human being? That you have to make them seem so inferior to yourself in order to make yourself feel superior? I had a friend of mine call gays filthy multiple times, and she even alluded to me being filthy. Why? Well, because I had a different opinion than her. A different opinion, and all of a sudden I'm filthy. Well, that's fabulous. That is just great. Just because somebody has a different opinion than you do does not mean that you have to resort to name calling. Does not mean you have to think of a person less than you. And I'm going to tell you something. There is nobody righteous. How dare you start pointing out other people's sins? I'm so tired of Christianity. Christianity spends all of its time pointing out the sins in everybody else, and never do they point fingers at themselves. The people misapply grace and law constantly, and it drives me batty. They apply law to everybody else. They say, you're doing this wrong, you're doing this wrong, you're doing this wrong, you're doing this wrong. And then when it comes to themselves, they're like, well, I got grace. Well, let me tell you something. Okay? Why don't you start applying the law to yourself and grace to everybody else? Because that is the only way to be righteous. If you start pointing out sins in everybody else, does anybody ever remember the Lord's Prayer? Forgive my trespasses, I forgive those who trespass against us. Okay, you're supposed to forgive others before God can even think about forgiving you. The things that they say, these hurtful things that they say about gays and stuff like that. There was a woman that committed adultery, and everybody was like, oh, she's a whore, she's a slut, we need to stone her, we need to stone her, God hates adulterers, God hates adulterers, God hates adulterers, just like God hates fags, God hates fags. You remember this? You've heard this before? It seems fairly familiar to me. What did Jesus Christ say to them? He who was without sin cast the first stone. You don't point out sin in other people. If somebody wants to know the truth, you share it with them. If they start condemning other people, you nail them to the wall. But you don't. But you do not point fingers at people saying, you're ungodly. The only time you're ever allowed to point out that somebody else is ungodly was when they did it to somebody first. If they have said to somebody, you are not as righteous as I am, then you can point your finger and say, you are ungodly. I am tired of this. I am tired of dealing with this. This Christianity as a whole has got to realize, they've got to wake up. This is not you picking on the weak so that you can make yourself feel better. Okay, it's us versus them. No, it's not us versus them. There is none righteous. No, not one. There is nobody that has done it all. Okay? So get off your high horse. You're not perfect. And every time you think about saying mean things about anybody else, remember, he who's without sin gets to cast the first stone. You know, Jesus Christ asked, he said, who was the neighbor to the man that fell amongst thieves? Okay? There was a priest, there was a Pharisee, and the Pharisees taught scripture. The priests were supposed to represent God. But you know who was the one that was the neighbor to the man who fell amongst thieves? It was the Samaritan. And the Samaritan was the lowest of the low in the Jewish society. They were the people that everybody thought as unrighteous. That they were, God hates Samaritans. God hates Samaritans. And I'm going to tell you something. The Samaritan that did the will of God is your neighbor. And anybody that does not do the will of God is not your neighbor. I have been homeless. When I took a vow of poverty, there were more gay men that helped me out than anybody else. And not once did any of them touch me or do anything to provoke any kind of... I'm serious. Like, across the board, I have been helped by gay men more than straight men. Than Christians. Okay? And I find, and whenever I read the parable of the Good Samaritan, I'm always reminded of that. They may not know God, but they are doing God's will. Does that mean that they're going to heaven? I don't know. It's not for me to judge. I know what the word says, and I'm not here to condemn or judge anybody. That's not my job, and I don't know why you think it's your job. Okay, Christ died for all men's sins, and if anybody at any time decides to ask forgiveness for their sins, Christ will pay for that sin. Stop jumping on other people and telling them that they're not worthy. Because anybody is worthy to receive the blessings of God. You know, and I hear this all the time. I don't hate the sinner, I hate the sin. But then stop glomming all the sinners together and saying that they're filthy. You don't know them. They're independent people. There are some that are righteous, there are some that are not righteous. But I'm going to tell you something. Sin is sin. If I'm having sex with another man, or if I'm jerking off in the corner, you know, to ungodly stuff, it's all the same sin. There is non-righteous. It's all sexual sin. Not one's better than another. If I'm thinking about another man's wife and he's thinking about having sex with a man, who's better? Who's worse? We're all sinners. If I'm coveting my neighbor, if I covet things and I want nice clothes or name labels or I want people to think of me as righteous or anything. If I'm committing any sin, it's all sin. It's all sin. It's all sin. There's not one sin that's better than another. There's not one sin that's worse than another. It's all sin. Stop attacking each other. I don't get it. Anyway, I don't know. I know it's been a while since I've been on, and I just had it. I have had it, and I'm just tired of everybody attacking everybody else. So play nice. Jesus Christ came to pay for all men's sins, and we all know that the love of God shines upon every man. So, and if a man wishes to be ignorant, let him be ignorant. So I'm just putting this out there, okay? You don't teach people that don't want to hear, and you need to stop condemning people that don't know the truth. And I'm going to tell you something, and if you start treating people like they're scum, or you start treating people like their enemy, they're going to start acting like your enemy. And you don't want people to act like an enemy to you. You know, what does it say in Scripture? It says you're supposed to do good to your enemies. These people, I don't know. I'm done. I guess my rant is over with. But I'm just going to tell you something. You know, you guys are Christians. Start acting like it. Start acting like it. Treat people with respect, with love, with admiration. Just treat people like they're human beings. And maybe you can witness to them. And maybe you could start saving some souls instead of just driving people away from you and making them hate you. Yes, they hate you. They put all, and just as you put all gays into one category and say they're all evil, all gays put all Christians into one category saying they're all evil. Then it becomes us versus them, and there shouldn't be an us versus them. There are some out there that may want to know the truth, that may want to hear it, but as long as we glom them as all evil, they're going to glom all us as evil. Come on, people, get it together. We're Christians. In the name of Christ, please, let's just treat people with some respect, some dignity. Anyway, I'm the Heretic, signing out. Peace.